Hi everyone, my name's Dan and I work with the Alaska Mega line of concentrates. I hope you are all inspired to re-examine your supply chains, and after that talk by Mr. Guggenheim, I appreciate your focus on the oceans. I'd like to introduce our next segment here. We're going to talk about the market, but from two different angles. First, the raw material supply side, and then the consumer end. And to present the raw material supplies is Dr. Aldo Bernasconi, who's a new addition to the GOED team. He comes to us from the University of Utah, where he received his PhD, and he did a lot of work with modeling and management of biosamples, and he's a data scientist, which is a little overwhelming to me. So he spends a lot of time modeling and forecasting, doing algorithms. I'm glad that he's working on omega-3s and not on derivatives on the stock market. So he's looking at some data that can be potentially very useful to all of you and to all of us as we look at how to understand our markets and what's going on in the world. So, you'll please welcome Dr. Bernasconi.
Thank you. Data scientist is just a fancy way of saying number cruncher, which is what I do. Let me start by saying in here that I'm very, very excited about these wonderful little videos that we have. Otherwise, I would be following up the previous speaker without a little break in between. You would be disappointed by my delivery. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the ingredient market. We did some effort at putting together some numbers for 2012 and 2013, and these are the upper level version of what these numbers are. If you put two economists in a row, in a room, then you get three opinions. That's an old joke. My brother is an economist. Actually told him this joke. I was expecting him to be upset or yell at me or something like that. He didn't. He thought about it. He said, yeah, that's true. That's exactly the way we are. But then he pointed out that it's not because economists, or at least not all economists, are completely clueless. It's because economists work out of really, really bad data. And I'm not an exception to that. I'm not an economist, but I work out of really bad data here. So please be patient with me and consider anything that I'm going to tell you as being preliminary. But to put together this report, we went to every single source of data we could figure out. This includes things like international trade data from customs offices from I don't know how many countries, production statistics from as many countries that can keep this kind of stuff, bills of lading, interviews and feedback from GOED members. A few of you are in this room, and I really, really thank you for all your help in here. Financial statements from those companies that are public, national, international agencies, others, and numbers, and computations, and so on. Yet, after all of this, we know that the information we have is incomplete, and often it is conflicting. You go to two completely random customs offices. You ask, for example, I'm going to pick names completely at random here. You ask Canada how much fish oil it's sending to Norway. And then you ask Norway how much fish oil you're receiving from Canada. You get completely different answers. Now, it turns out in here that there's somebody in this room who knows a lot more than me about how much fish oil is going from Canada to Norway and why. And they would love to talk to you. So please, if I say any number in what is going to follow that doesn't seem to make any sense, please come find me, yell at me, tell me why I'm clueless. I'm going to appreciate it. So to say it again, these numbers are preliminary. This is a new team doing this report. So we have had a contractor before doing this same report. We decided to go for an internal process this time. Part of the reason was because some of the numbers were not exactly trustworthy. Some were very good, some were suspicious. The other reason is because we really want to build a little bit deeper understanding of some of these numbers. We want to add more information. We would like to have more detail on concentrates. We want to know what happens, what percentage of concentrates is in ethyl esters, what is triglycerides. We want to get a deeper understanding of what concentrations are going on in there. Some markets were not separated in previous reports and are important, and we would like to understand them too. And there are new sources that are coming in all the time, so we want to have an understanding of that. The other reason, and maybe the most important one why we did this process internally this time, is because it really doesn't do to have one report every couple of years. Things move faster than that. So we want to have more control on those numbers so we can modify them as more information becomes available, and we can give you some more timely information. Again, any information that comes your way, call me. But you didn't come here to listen to me talk about why we're doing things. You came here to listen to numbers. Numbers I can do. So, according to estimates, the total market for 2012 for omega-3 products was roughly 87,000 metric tons. And the volume for 2013 was 89,000 and change. That's an increase of about 2.2% in volume. I think that we were all expecting a little bigger increase than that, but it was a disappointing season for anchovy, and you know, you have a bad anchovy season, you have a bad season. Still 2% is not bad. When it comes to value, excuse me, I'm going ahead of myself. The volume by application, still most of it is going to dietary supplements, nearly 80% of that. We introduced a new category in this report because it's relatively important when it comes to volume, if not so much in value, and that was pet food. And we think that roughly 10% of all of the volume is going to pet foods, mostly menhaden. Now for value. We think that the total market was this year 1.65 billion, and last year was 1.65 billion, and this year was about 1.81. It was not driven entirely by increases in volume. It was driven by increases in prices because of the tighter supply. By application, now 50% of the value went into dietary supplements, followed by pharma and by formula. I keep saying that I want feedback in here, and thankfully I have been getting feedback. So I keep hearing that possibly my formula numbers are slightly too high. But again, if anybody knows anything about that, come talk to me. Most of the volume came from anchovy. About 60% of the volume came from anchovy this year, which is a slight change. It seems to be coming down a little bit from last year. It went just from about 62% to about a little over 60. This is not necessarily because we are just seeing a big change in the way things are happening in here. It's not likely a long-term trend that we are seeing starting to appear in here, that anchovy is having a lesser contribution. It's just simply that there's less anchovy going on around. Therefore, well, it's still going to human. Okay, the total human market is not changing all that much because there's a tighter supply to anchovy. It's feed it's feed for aquaculture and feed for animals that is really taking the brunt of that one. But it's possible that because of a lesser supply, the price is going up, and that is making other sources more attractive. That may explain why we have this little change in here in the last year. The largest market is still North America. It is followed by Europe and then China. North America is still 36,000 tons, and Europe is about 2/3 of that, and China is 1/3 of that. It's also the largest market by value. So about $700 million is what we estimate the market to be in the US, followed by Europe at about a little less than 400,000, and followed by China at not quite 250. This is the United States. The distribution of both value and tonnage by application. So I'm going to have this works. We have the volume on this side in here and shown in the blue lines, and we have the value in this column in here, both in value and in volume. Of course, supplements are the biggest share, and that is followed in volume by pet food and in value by pharma. A lot of volume is going into pet food. We love our pets around here. I have an old dog, takes omega-3s. Her doctor said that she had to take omega-3s because she's getting arthritis and because the omega-3s are going to lubricate her joints. I don't believe that one. Europe. Even larger proportion of the volume in Europe than in the States is going to supplements. And then in value, supplements are followed by pharma, quite large. My number for pharma, again, may be slightly too large in here. China. Very large volumes are going into dietary supplements. A small volume is going to pharma, but that, of course, is a higher value application. So the value in pharma is growing, the value in formula. I've looked at so many numbers in the last couple of days, you have to bear with me if I get confused. The value in formula is growing up very fast. It is estimated, actually, that the formula market in China is possibly growing at about 20% rate or so. In the rest of Asia, is slightly less than that. So the growth in China is mostly being seen on that side. China is growing fast. One thing that entirely surprised me about this one is if you take a look at previous numbers, at previous reports, you have seen China growing and growing and getting bigger, and it was expected that China was going to catch up with Europe one of these days. It hasn't. As a matter of fact, volume has grown a little better in Europe than it has in China, although value in China has been growing a little faster. I was shocked by that one. I think that this is likely something temporary. Again, because the anchovy supply is so low, but we had a reasonably good year for cod. Europe being more depending on cod, China more on anchovy, that put a little bit of a damper on the growth in China. Those are all the numbers I'm going to give you. Now I actually am in a tight spot. Dan put me in a tight spot. Thank you, Dan. Because I'm not going to make any predictions. I spent the best part of my last 10 years making predictions based on data. And I don't dare to make any predictions about what is going to happen in here. Prediction is difficult, especially if it's about the future. Otherwise, smart people say dumb stuff. Why is it difficult in this particular case? Most of the predictions that we have seen in the past have just been based on the following idea. Oh, we have seen this growth in the last 2 years. Therefore, we can expect to see an equivalent growth going on in the future. That is a great idea, and it actually works in many situations, but it doesn't work in here. It is kind of based on the assumption that demand is controlling all of this thing, and as long as demand keeps growing, then the market is going to continue growing. And sadly, this does not apply in here. We just have a market that is partly controlled by the demand, but is very heavily constrained by the supply. And the supply is somewhat unpredictable. So I could stand in here and make all kinds of predictions about what is going to happen in the next couple of years, and then the temperature in the surface of the ocean off the coast of Peru can go 1 degree up, and then all of my predictions go to the basket. It's not something that I can really do at the moment. I think that we're going to keep trying to figure out how to make these predictions, but at the moment I cannot. To say it in a slightly different way, this is an old science fiction book, The Stochastic Man, Robert Silverberg, a classic, written in 1975. I'm reading from the bottom, from the back of the book in my own copy. It goes like this. Lou Nichols' business at the end of the 20th century was stochastic prediction. Okay, stochastic prediction, that's the fancy way of saying big data. High-powered guesswork. He was very good at this well-paying, sophisticated, and technical species of witchcraft. Again, I don't dare to make any predictions at the moment. So as I mentioned, this is a work in progress. Any number that I have given you today is just preliminary. We're pretty confident about the overall numbers. There's some details that we keep working on. We have more detail on these numbers that we're going to be making available as soon as we finish touching up some of the details. So the numbers are imperfect. Life is imperfect. So are my numbers. We're going to keep working at improving them. And as I mentioned, your comments and your feedback are more welcome.